can help with that.
Okay.
But I know you're also recording on Facebook Live, so I don't think there'll be a loss to that.
Okay.
So hopefully during the interactions, you'll also get to learn a little bit more about CMS Africa and the work that we do. My background is in microfinance. I have spent about 16 years of my 21 years of working life in the financial sector. Half of that was in employment in microfinance, and specifically in the area of product development and research. And then I've also spent the latter half, the last 8 years, in financial literacy training, working on staff at CMS-Africa. And the scope of that mandate has been primarily the continent of Africa, but I've also been privileged to interact with diaspora communities to still share some of the content that I'm going to be interacting with you today. So spent the last half of my time in the financial sector training on personal and household financial literacy. And I'll be sharing a little more about our Financial Freedom for Families program that helps us to deliver this mandate. Joseph mentioned it at the beginning when he was introducing me. I'm also a trained counselor, and some of that will be coming to bear as we go along. So CMS Africa is the organization I work for. You can visit our website and learn more about our work. Today, we are going to be looking at the context we are in, which is a COVID-19 context, which context describes a crisis situation. And I'm glad that the Bible study reflections we are having were in the context of a storm and a crisis. And I'll be referring to that as we go along. We will look at financial anxiety. And financial anxiety is a construct from two disciplines: financial literacy and psychology. So the anxiety part is the psychology aspect. The financial part speaks to our competence and our literacy in matters finances, and in particular, personal finances. I'll also be looking at some tips that we can consider as individuals within this context of a crisis, but also going on beyond the crisis, because we are trusting God that this too shall pass. There shall be a hereafter COVID. So the question to ask is, what shall be in that season and time post-COVID? So what financial tips can we have? Like I said, I'll be drawing a lot of my content from our course, Financial Freedom for Families. And what I'll be mentioning here will just be that, mentions and a high level or just touching on key principles, each of which require time to internalize, to ingrain, to form habits around, and to form life patterns around. So today I'll just be mentioning, but there's a whole process, a discipleship process that brings you to the place of mastery, to the place of ingraining this in your own life. And I'll be inviting you as we go along to consider this kind of experience and journey, because this is how we learn and internalize these concepts. I can talk to you about riding a bicycle. I can give you motivational talks about bicycles. I can give you research, bicycle riding. I can give you research. And this is documents written on the principle and the skill of riding bicycles. But there's really one way that you will learn how to ride a bicycle, which is by getting on it and trying and attempting to ride the bicycle until you get to the place of learning. There may be slips and falls in the process, but that is part of the learning experience. So I hope that that is one of the things that Joseph and team, you will consider beyond this. So let me look at the context. The context we are in is the context of COVID-19. Right now, globally, we have just gone past the 7 million cases mark. We are at over 400,000 deaths, 407 actually as of today, 1,000 deaths as a result of COVID-19. But we are also seeing economies attempting to reopen. So we are seeing an easing of restrictions. We are seeing a lifting of restrictions in a number of economies across the world. And this is coming as good news to us. But we are also seeing caution. Today, Israel that had started easing and opening up and inviting its populace to come out is now just setting up what they are calling emergency shutdown measures. Why? Because before they started opening up the economy, they were averaging around 20 new cases a day. But as soon as they started opening the economy, they shot to over 100 cases a day. And so they're having to reconsider and ask themselves, is this premature? Is this reopening premature? If you come closer home, we have our East Africa neighbors by relationship, Rwanda, who already are opening up the economy and inviting their populace to step out. So we are seeing an easing of these measures. In Kenya here, we saw an extension of the curfew period. We'd hoped there would be more, but there was caution and there's wisdom behind that. And so there's an easing, there's an opening up and a seeming thinking that COVID is starting to go behind and we are starting to leave it behind. But the reality is that COVID is still with us and we might have to live with it for some time to come. That's a reality we have to contend with. The second reality is the economic impact of COVID-19. Businesses are shutting down, jobs are being lost, pay cuts are an order of the day, and being business owners, being people who are in the marketplace, this is a reality that we are very awake to and we are dealing with. Some of us have had to lay off staff. Some of us have had to close down businesses. Some of us have had to cut down income streams and to rethink business strategies that we had put ourselves on in order to go to the next level in terms of how we do business. Some of us had just taken on debt with the understanding and assumption that business would roll forward a certain way. And now you are carrying heavy debt, but you don't have the business that you had anticipated to match that risk and investment that you took. So this is a reality that we are contending with. Another reality is social unrest. As we speak, we are just on a countdown to Boyd's funeral in the US, the gentleman who died under a police situation. And we've seen the kind of unrest it's triggered across the US, and this has trickled to other parts in the world. So social unrest is a reality that we are contending with. And this is to be expected during this period of crisis. And it will manifest in different forms, one of which may be a spike in crime. That is to be expected in this kind of a situation. But a very agitated populace is what you are going to be seeing, and easily angered and irritable people. That is to be expected in these circumstances. Another aspect of concern is mental health concerns. We are seeing a growing case of addictions, whether it's substance addictions or process addictions like pornography. We are seeing a lot of these addictions spiking. We are seeing increase in cases of depression being brought to us. One of the health concerns that is being well documented currently is this increase in domestic violence. In fact, I think CS Matiang'i just this week instructed the police department to actually increase the number of police officers assigned to responding to domestic violence cases. So we are seeing a spike in this. We are seeing a spike in promiscuous behavior. Sex addiction is on the rise. And as counselors, we are having to contend a lot with this. Now, this is the situation we are in. The timeline and projection is that this will probably play out for the next 6 to 18 months. The effect of COVID-19, even if we were to be reintroduced back into the society and into the marketplace and the restrictions were eased, the effect of COVID-19 would probably be felt over the next 6 to 18 months. Now, as I put that into perspective, let me also overlap that with another reality that as Kenyans we have to face. And this is the reality that 2021, which is well within this 6 to 18 months window, is a pre-election year in Kenya. Now, as business people, we know that the year before an election, we have to contend with a dip in our economy, because investors start pulling back and they start adopting a wait and see approach. So we start feeling the crunch of the election year at least 1 year before the election. So come next year, we will be entering a pre-election year. The political noise is about to start going up. Just before COVID hit us hard, we had the BBI and the politicians really raising the noise levels around the BBI and pushing the BBI. Now, COVID silenced that for us, but you can rest assured as soon as COVID starts blowing over, the political noise will start rising up. Today we have in Nyandwa, I think it's Waigoro, who is facing possible impeachment. And there's fascination around that already rising. There's already political noise starting to build up in the background. So what will happen is come 2021, given that COVID has hit 2020 hard, we shall have possible noise around referendum, possible noise around BBI, possible regrouping among our political class, and a lot of intrigue will start to be introduced to us. 2022 is our election year, and we know that it's most intense during an election year for us. 2023 is a post-election year. And we know that from experience, because this has happened to us in several cycles in living history, that we start on a slow build-up post-election before we get into a solid state in terms of the settledness of our economy for our businesses to thrive. Now, why do I take the time to break this down for us? It is because the crisis that is now with us, the COVID-19 crisis, I would want to submit to us, is not just a crisis that is in isolation. It is a crisis in context. And so we have to think of our financial reality in 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023 at a minimum. Those are 2021, 22, 23, 4 good years of possible financial strain and stretching. And so if we are going to ride out this season that we are in, then we need to prepare to dig in, because we are riding out an extended period. And by my estimation, it's easily 4 years. So as business people, this is our reality. And this is what we have to contend with. Now, I know that's not a very high note to start on, and I know it might visit some sense of feeling like, so what does this mean for us? But let me start by asking you a question. And Joseph noted that we are welcome to use the chat function. If all your income streams, as I'm speaking to you right now, were to be closed, all your income streams were to be closed as you know them, I want you to do a quick computation in your mind for me and to estimate for me in number of months how long you would last. So just think through, if all my income streams, like after this session, as soon as you finish, you get communication that no more money will flow your way. What you have is what you have to work with. How long would you and your household last? Put a number for me in the comment section. And Joseph, I think you will keep an eye on the comments for me. I also have my colleague with me, Sarah Gitahi. She's part of this session and presentation. She'll also be keeping an eye on the comments that are coming up. But please comment. Let's see. How long do you anticipate if your income tabs were to be closed right now? How long would you last? So I don't know whether, Joseph, there is any activity and what kind of comments are coming through.
Yes, we have one from Isaac. Isaac says 6 months. 6 months. Yes.
Yes.
Let them come. I think for me is there is also one 3 months.
So yeah, so just keep an eye on that as they come. So as you think through that, then consider that we're talking about a good 3 to 4 years of just this kind of just needing to ride out what may seemingly be a rough season for us as business people. But let the comments be coming in. So let me now get into financial anxiety. And what I want to, I had already said that this is a marriage of two disciplines, the financial literacy and the psychological aspect of it. And so I'll be defining first what anxiety is so that we understand it. And then I'll look at specifically financial anxiety. And then we can build from there to see how do we respond to it practically in our context. So what is anxiety? Anxiety is a persistent, excessive, chronic worry. Persistent, excessive, chronic worry. Okay? Now, what you need to understand is that anxiety is actually a normal human response to impending change. Anxiety is a normal human response. In fact, we need it for survival. Okay? However, there are levels that anxiety can reach that then become of concern from a psychological perspective. There's a threshold that if anxiety crosses, then it is of interest from a counselor's perspective. Okay? Number one, if the level of anxiety that you're experiencing interferes with what we describe as normal life function, it interrupts your ability to go about your day-to-day business, then it is of concern and of interest to me as a counselor. If it causes what we describe as suffering, and this suffering could be mental, it could be psychological, it could be physical, and we'll be looking at that in the next slide. If it causes suffering, then it is of concern to me as a counselor. If there is evidence of what we describe as unhealthy coping, which can be characterized by harm to self or harm to others, wastefulness, or just unexplained extreme behavior, then that is of interest to me from a psychological perspective. If it overwhelms your ability to cope. Now, human beings, as God has designed us, we have a high threshold for adversity. And in fact, as counselors, we are not quick to intervene because we would want that your natural ability to cope is the first response to a crisis or an adverse situation. However, if that ability to cope is overwhelmed, then as counselors, we would want to step in and assist with that situation. Now, Financial anxiety, we've looked at anxiety, and anxiety is cross-cutting. What defines a specific aspect of anxiety is what it is centered on. So financial anxiety is a deep and persistent sense of worry about one's financial situation and one's ability to fulfill current and anticipated obligations. Another way of saying it, it is an uneasy and unhealthy attitude towards engaging with or administering one's personal finances in an effective way. What this essentially means is every thought, every contemplation, every realization that you have to interact with a money issue, especially one of personal finances, if that realization causes a sense of being uneasy or being worried, or it triggers fear, and we'll be looking at how this manifests, then you're probably looking, and the focus of it is finances, then you're looking at financial anxiety. Now, the different signs, and that's what I want to just walk through an indicative list of a few of these signs. It is not going to be in any way exhaustive. However, I'm going to invite us, as I just itemize the different characteristics that I'm going to be mentioning, on a piece of paper. Please, if one of these characteristics relates to you, I would invite you to just put a tick on a piece of paper. And at the end of this slide, I'll ask that we count how many ticks we put down, because this will just be an indicative way of telling whether you may be dealing with a form of anxiety. And if it is centered around money, then it is going to be likely an indicator that you're dealing with financial anxiety. So please do that. And then secondly, do not adjust your set. What I'm presenting in that form, so there's nothing wrong with your screen. So just follow along as I go. Number one, in the emotional space, what do you anticipate to see or experience? A sense of being overwhelmed and a sense of not being in control. When you think about matters finances and the obligations that you have, current and future, and the inquiries that may come to you concerning need to respond financially, do you feel a sense of being overwhelmed? Do you feel a sense of not being in control? And is this a persistent sense? If this applies to you, please indicate there with a tick. Helplessness. Do you feel helpless? When you look at your financial situation and your reality, you look maybe at your debt burden, you look at your staff obligations, you look at your tax obligations, you look at all around you, and you just feel on top of being overwhelmed, helpless, and trapped without a way to escape this scenario. Is this you? Please put a tick. Do you feel restless? Do you find that you're not able to sit still in one place? You try sitting down, it doesn't work. You stand up, it still doesn't work. You pace to and fro. You are fidgety. You want to remove your phone, like you want to make a phone call. You want to put your phone back in your pocket. As soon as it's back in your pocket, you want to take it out. You want to look inside your purse. You can't sit in the sitting room. You want to go to the bedroom. When you get to the bedroom, you want to move away from the bedroom. You want to go to the balcony. You find that you are restless. You're not able to sit still. The underlying emotion here is fear. Do you feel a sense of fear? Is this what you're experiencing in your emotional space? And these are just indicative, not exhaustive. In terms of thoughts, do you struggle to focus? Do you start thoughts and finish them? Or do you start thoughts and then you find that you've switched from one thought to another and you can't start a thought and complete it. You struggle to focus, or you start a task and you can't finish it. There's so many things that are half done all around you, that you started with good intentions, but you can't finish, whether they are small tasks at home or there's assignments in the office or at the business or whatever it is, or projects and initiatives, but you're struggling to focus. So you just struggle to focus. And coupled with this is increased forgetfulness. You pick up your phone to call, and then when the phone is in your hand, you can't remember who you are picking the phone to call. Or you call someone and then you can't remember the reason why you are calling them. Or you start a thought and you can't remember where that thought was going, and you just lose that thought. Or you commit to do things and you intend and are determined to do that, but you just forget. And the next time you see the person, you remember, and you can't explain why you are so forgetful. But this has not been the normal for you. It's increased forgetfulness that you have been observing over the recent past. Is this true of you? Loss of meaning and purpose. There's no meaning and purpose. You're just feeling, what's the point? What's the use? Why should I even struggle? Why should I even bother anymore? Whatever excitement and enthusiasm was there is gone. You're just feeling there's no meaning and there's no use. And there's a sense of resignation that is descending upon you. Is this true of you? Please put a tick. In terms of behavior, let me start with sleep. And there's what I will describe as disturbed sleep. And this may manifest in 3 ways. There are more, and sleep is a whole discipline in itself, but I'll not get into it. But no sleep. You get into bed, you just toss and turn. You just can't settle down and sleep. So no sleep is something you are struggling with, and that you've noticed you're struggling with. You struggle to sleep. Some of us may even be on medication that is helping us sleep. Or you keep waking up. When you sleep, it's light sleep, and you keep waking up. It's interrupted sleep. You can't sleep through the night. Your sleep is constantly being interrupted. Is this true of you? If yes, you know what to do. Or when you sleep, you wake up anxious. You wake up with a racing heart. You wake up sweating. Your palms are sweating. You are in a panic. And you can't explain this, but this has just been happening consistently and repetitively. Is this you? Please put a tick as we agreed, and next to disturb sleep. Avoidance or obsession. You don't want conversations around money. You don't want to hear people talking about money. You don't want to engage in conversations around money. And this is an issue for you. Is this true? When your spouse comes to you to talk about money, you push them away. When your children come to talk about anything touching on money, you push them away. You don't want to talk about money. Or the other extreme could be true, that you can't stop talking about money. All your conversations end up being about money. Even if you're talking about the weather, you'll find a way of just talking about the money issues that you're facing and the scarcity of it, or the challenges that you're experiencing around it. Is this you? Put a tick next to avoidance or obsession. Withdrawn and irritable. You're pulling away. You don't want to interact with people. You are irritable around matters money. You are keeping to yourself. Is this you? Put a tick next to that. Loss of appetite. You are no longer interested in food. You may prepare it for others to eat, but you will not partake of it yourself. If you have in a marriage relationship, sexual intimacy is no longer appealing to you anymore. You've lost appetite for these things. Is this true of you? Please put a tick there. Physically, you may have what we call psychosomatic pain or Hapanakule syndrome, which you have unexplained pains that are just persistent. Leo ni mgongo, kesho ni kichwa, mara ni mguu, mara ni bega. You just have pain here and there. You have headaches, you have stomach aches, you have irritable bowel movements, you have backaches, and they are not going away. And when you go to hospital, there is no medical explanation for it. To you, it is real. You're experiencing these discomforts, but there is no medical explanation to it. Is this true of you? Please put a text next to that. Fatigue and lethargy. You are tired, it persistence, fatigue, and it is not going away. You go to bed tired, you wake up tired. You try to rest, you're still tired and lethargic and just slow. The energy and the excitement that you used to have is not there anymore. Is this true of you? Please put a tick next to that. Struggle breathing is another one that people experience. So you feel like you are struggling to breathe. And especially for those who are tending towards panic attacks, this is normally an issue. So struggle breathing, irregular breathing, just notice there's something off about my breathing and it's been persistent. If so, please put a tick next to that. Heart functions and issues. So you're having pains around your chest and your heart area. There's pain there, or there's irregular beating heart rate, or there's palpitations, which means you can actually hear your heart beating. And these are things that you've noticed and they're persistent. If this is the case with you, please put a tick next to that. Another interesting one is you start noticing there's a certain shaking now that is being visited on you. So like your hand, you notice that there's a slight tremor in your hand. If you hold up your finger, you can see there's shaking. Or when you're holding something, a piece of paper, you start noticing, I can see some shaking here and it's not normal. And you're not able to control it, or muscle twitching that you can't explain. And you've started to see that this is happening quite often. If this is true to you, true of you, please put a tick there. Now, I've mentioned around 16 or so signs on this slide. Like I said when I was starting, this is not exhaustive. It is just some things to look out for. But how many of these did you tick? Let me see, just do a quick count. And then let's go to the comment section and just put a number there. Let's see what kind of numbers will start coming up. And I know we are people of faith, so honesty will not be an issue here. But let's just see what kind of numbers have people come up with. If you can just start putting numbers up there. Sarah, you can help me with that. Check that out, or Joseph, Sarah Getahi or Joseph. Just keep an eye on that, and let's see, are there any numbers starting to pop up?
Yes,
Joseph,
we have 9. We have 1. It's just a continuous. They're coming in.
Uh-huh.
I think for myself, I have 5.
Uh-huh. So like I said, this is not prescriptive. It's just indicative that we may be having issues of anxiety that we are looking at, and that possibly if these issues, when they are visited on you, your sense of being overwhelmed, your sense of being helpless, your avoidance, the people you owe money, you are not picking their calls, or people who want conversations around money with you, you're avoiding them. If these things have to do with money, then you're possibly dealing with financial anxiety. So let me say that there is good news. Financial anxiety can be managed. Financial anxiety can be managed, and financial anxiety can be treated. It can be managed and it can be treated. But our response to it has to be twofold. We have to address the psychological aspect, and we have to address the psychological aspect, and we have to address the financial literacy aspect of it. So let me spend the next few minutes just giving some quick tips, touching on the psychological and touching on the financial. In terms of did somebody want to say something? Joseph?
No, I think it's okay. We can go on.
Okay. So in terms of the psychological aspect, Remember, like I said at the beginning, that anxiety is a normal human reaction, okay? So let's have that in mind as we begin. But we need to be self-aware. Listen to thyself. So I've talked about the emotional, I've talked about the behavioral, I've talked about what is going on in our mind, the cognitive. I've talked about these different aspects. So develop a discipline of listening to your body, observing what is going on in your thought environment, observing what is going on in your emotional person, and looking out for these markers and to see whether it is part of what you're dealing with. Because if you're able to pick them early, then you are able to address this situation in good time. Physical well-being. Take care of yourself, and I'll talk about different aspects. One is how you are eating, nourishing yourself, and how you are, and your sleep patterns and cycles. So sleep, again, is a whole topic in itself, and I'm not able, given the time that I have, to get into details about it. But you need to observe your sleep cycles. You need to sleep for the solid window of 7 to 8 hours for you to have a healthy state of being. Exercise, stretch, proper breathing. We, on average, do what is described as shallow breathing, which is breathing with our upper part of our lungs. Deep breathing pushes air into the lower half of our lungs, and you'll observe this if you're doing it correctly because your stomach will extend forward. So deep breathing, and there are techniques to breathing. Again, I'm not able to get into that, but you can research this. This is also information that is available on the internet. Posture is another one. But also, of course, if you would want, you can always have sessions following up and exploring these aspects deeper. Posture, hold your body in good, healthy posture. Right now, during these times when we are at home, we are spending a lot of time on sofas, slouched out and in not very good positions. So we need to hold our bodies in proper posture. And this will help our overall wellness. Personal grooming. Brush your teeth, comb your hair, get into a fresh change of clean clothes, both the outer garments and the inner garments. Take care of yourself. People are not tending to these aspects of themselves, and this is causing problems. Build routines. When you go to sleep, when you wake up, when you have your meals, when you go to the office, or when you do your work, when you interact with family, put routines around that. They will help ease your anxiety levels. Remove clutter is another aspect that we need to address. Remove clutter in your life. If you're having to, if you're going to do this, it will eliminate your sense of anxiety. So clean up your spaces, clean up your rooms, clean up your office space, and eliminate clutter. This will help lower your anxiety levels. Coping with anxiety, other tips to consider: social support. Don't go through this season alone. Get somebody to share this season and this space with you, to ride out this time with you. Avoid toxic individuals and toxic settings. Avoid argumentative situations and individuals, because this will only serve to heighten your anxiety levels. Keep your mind sharp and challenged. Moderate your consumption of news and information, especially social media. Be very deliberate around your consumption of that. Take care of your emotional person and your emotional well-being. There's a lot of pent-up emotion that is building up. Figure out a way of easing this pent-up emotion and addressing it. Spiritual well-being. I'm glad that we are coming together as people of faith. Nourish your spirit, man. But also spiritual well-being speaks to your sense of meaning, your sense of purpose, your sense of fulfillment in what you are doing. So replenish that if you feel that the energies there are going down. Now, Joseph, I've talked of a number of things. I don't know which one stands out. So I'll invite the members to quickly just go to the chat section and just highlight the one that stands out for you. which one of these that I have mentioned stands out for you or speaks to your situation? And which one would you want to start working on? So Joseph, I'll give you a minute to just maybe just respond to that. Let me know what the members may be sharing as we go along.
Thank you, Henry. I also have my colleague Pascal, who will also be helping us to check the charts. Pascal, if you see anything, just let us know. Let the charts come kindly.
Yes. If the charts can keep coming, that will be very welcome. But as I do, I will move on to the financial aspect. So I talked about two halves. I talked about the ecological aspect. Now let me look at the financial aspect. And in a crisis like the one we are in, there are normally three stages. Pre-crisis, where we invest in preparation. We just learned about Jesus, the build up to this interaction and the storm situation. And in that situation, we see Jesus was asleep in the storm. It's a storm situation, but Jesus is asleep. Are you able to sleep during the financial storms of your life? Proverbs 37 says, a prudent man sees evil coming and hides himself. But a foolish person will go on into the danger and face the consequences because they were not prepared. So are we able to be like the prudent person? The F4 course that I mentioned speaks to this and helps individuals, business people, understand finances, understand the dynamics behind it, understand the biblical principles that speak to our stewardship of finances and help prepare you for tough seasons such as the one we are in. I know at the tail end, I'll speak about the course we are about to start. And you are invited if you want to pick interest and follow that. Then in the mid-crisis, we have hibernation and survival. We look at the bear, learning and adapting, and we have what we describe as self-care. So self-care I've talked about when I was talking about the psychological aspect. Post-crisis, we're looking at relaunching yourself into the new normal, into the new season. And we look at some of the things that are opening up for us as an economy. Now, let me start by looking at the bear. The bear is an animal that has to ride out tough, lengthy winter seasons. And it is, God has specifically adapted this creature to survive the storm, the hard season of winter. How does this happen? Number one, the heart rate, the bear goes into what is called a hibernation. And during hibernation, its heart rate drops from about 50 beats per minute to around 10 beats per minute, or even as low as 8, which is a 75 to 80% drop in heart rate. It loses about 20 to 40% of its body fat. And this is body fat, not muscle, because it needs the muscle to hunt and to rise from its hibernation. It balances its body temperature with its environment, and that's a change of about 6 to 7 degrees. It does not pass waste during this time. It instead recycles the protein in its waste and uses it to self-nourish. It can carry a pregnancy to term during hibernation, but it assesses its ability to carry. The female in this species assesses its ability to carry a pregnancy, and if it's by its assessment, it deems it not able to carry the pregnancy to term, it actually withdraws the embryo and delays implantation. And it can do this for up to 7.5 months. That is the wonder of God's creation. Now, for ourselves, how do we prepare to ride the winters of our lives? How do we ride out the crisis that we find ourselves in? I'm going to share a few tips that would help us with that. Number one is you start by computing your net worth. Establish the state of your flock is what Proverbs 27:23 tells us. Know the state of your flock. You arrive at this by taking what you have your total assets, and then the obligations that you have and what you owe. And then you net this off. And hopefully you will end up with a net positive position. The next question you ask is, how long can I sustain this net positive position? So that's where you start. You operate from a written budget. And like I said, in the course, we actually delve into how do you structure a budget? What are the elements of a budget? And how do you apportion within the budget when you are allocating? Record all expenses, every single expense. I don't care whether you're buying a tropical or a business asset, everything must be recorded and written down. Cut all waste. We talked about that. When the bear, when it's in hibernation, it does not pass waste. So eliminate waste, only operate with wants, with needs, not wants. And even with needs, you operate the bare basic form of that. So a good example I like is, if you have to buy cups in a season of crisis, then consider buying plastic cups. Don't buy expensive cups. Build an emergency fund. An emergency fund, like I described, we may have minimal resources right now, and our resources may be significantly depleted. But if you're going into an extended time of financial stretching, then it is fair to say that it may get harder and worse before it gets better. So build an emergency fund that will help you ride out the difficult times that may be coming ahead. In fair weather, during preparation phase, we actually recommend that you build the equivalent of 6 months of your living expenses, which may be a bit tough in a crisis situation, but suffice it to say at this point that you need to build an emergency fund. Suspend all new projects is what we recommend in a crisis situation. And let me qualify these projects. These are projects that will drain your financial resources significantly. Every time I raise this point, I get inquiries around what about investments. We caution, or we recommend extreme caution in terms of investment during crisis situations, unless you've done very clear assessments of your opportunity. We recommend against new projects. Consider asset sale or barter, because people may be cash strained. So what can you barter, or what can you sell to convert to cash, because you want to be cash rich? Avoid new debt. And if you are in debt, consider renegotiating your existing debt. And banks and debtors or our creditors are willing to entertain these conversations of just renegotiating our debt. Exercise what we describe as edifying or affirming generosity. This is generosity that leaves the recipient of your generosity feeling dignified. And how do you do this? If they are able to give a service, engage them to offer you a service. If they're able to work, give them work. And in exchange for their work, give them pay. If they're selling a good or a service, buy from them and pay generously for this offering that they are giving. Because then you are participating in edifying or affirming generosity. Build additional income streams. On average, you recommend that each household should have about 7 income streams. In times of crisis, this may not be as possible, but look at what other income streams can I generate? What dormant capacity do I have that I can explore? So what do you have in your hand? The lady, the wife of the prophet in 2 Kings 4:1-7, had oil. And so the prophet said, go get containers, fill those containers, then go sell this, the oil that you have been able, and feed yourself and your family and pay your debts. Trust God for sustenance. Remember Deuteronomy 29, the Israelites' shoes did not wear out, from verse 5. Their clothes did not wear out. God fed them on manna. The same God is able to sustain us in this time of crisis. Trust God for sustenance. Ascertain the worst case scenario. What is the worst that can possibly happen? Describe this, write it out in financial terms. Think through that. What is the worst that can happen? Explain that and look at that. Part of the fear when you are dealing with the signs of financial anxiety, part of the fear that we face is that the worst may be visited on us. So look at the worst case scenario on your terms, describe it, write it out, and start thinking, what would I possibly do if this scenario was visited on me? What recourse would I have? Start processing that situation, and it will help you anticipate and even prepare from right now. Transfer risk if you can, take insurance cover where possible, transfer risk to a third party, outsource what you can if you are able to do that in a business situation. If you have not written your will, please consider writing your will. And if you have written one, consider updating it. In the event of demise, let it be that you leave order and not disorder and confusion. So again, let's go to the chart. I've talked about a number of things. And just mention the one that you would want to do something about from the tips that I've talked about. Let's visit that and let's see what Joseph, the participants, will come up with. In terms of learning and adapting, we are in different sectors and industries. So look at your sector, look at your industry. What are the emerging trends? What are the new trends that you are observing? What personal development can you get? What platforms can you get onto? What webinars, online courses, and resources can you tap into? Conversations such as this are helpful in this time. Are you able to articulate the emerging opportunities, and are you able to explore them in one way or the other? This is also something that we strongly recommend. The third phase is the post-crisis. Beyond the crisis, do you have a plan of how you shall relaunch yourself beyond the crisis? What shall your first week after COVID goes be like? The first month, how will it be like? The first 3 months, how will they be like? The first 6 months, how will they be like? I've just described 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. Can you start imagining how your 2024 will be like? When all of this is behind you, how will you emerge beyond that period? And how will you have positioned yourself? The opportunities that are now coming up very strongly and very clearly are online enterprise and local manufacturing. These two are opening up as new opportunities going into the post-COVID season. How can you position for this? That is a question that I would want to pose to us. So I've moved fairly fast. I've looked at the context we are in. I've looked at financial anxiety. I've looked at some financial tips that we can respond to. And Joseph, I would want now to invite the members to just respond to what I have been mentioning. If they need me to go back to a certain slide or to a certain point or conversation point, I'd be glad to do that. But let me just pause there and invite some responses and reactions and possible questions. Joseph, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mwaniki, for this great presentation. I think myself, I'm also learning a lot, and it's evident that this is a reality that we are living in. We have my colleague, Pascal, who was helping with the questions. If there are any questions, Pascal, please just ask.
Oh yeah, definitely. Of course, thank you, Mr. Mwaniki. This has been really insightful. So there's definitely been a couple of questions that have popped up in the chat. So I'll just start by mentioning Priscilla's question. Are there specific business opportunities that have cropped up during this storm that one can take advantage of, except for selling digital products and selling masks?
Okay, one of the emerging areas and realizations, and this is global, has been the outsourcing of manufacturing to global centers such as China. That has been a strong trend pre-COVID. So what the governments of the world have realized is that situations may arise where these manufacturing centers may prioritize their own populace or their own countries for these essential goods. So what countries are doing now and into a post-COVID period, including the Kenya government, is starting to be very warm and friendly to local manufacturing and cottage industries. So there'll be a lot of support coming towards local manufacturing and cottage industries. So that is one area that individuals here can start positioning themselves for, because governments will be priming themselves to encourage that post-COVID. So if one is able to consider that, that's an area to explore, because local manufacturing, cottage industries, which are manufacturing that is done in small units within household environments, is going to be one of the encouraged spaces. So this is an area that one can explore and consider if they are inclined that way, or they can go into some level of production at that level. There will be a lot of positive and reinforcement coming into that.
Okay, really insightful. Thank you for that. So second question from Priscilla as well. How old should you be before writing a will?
As long as you have some resources that you are stewarding, you qualify to write a will. So oftentimes we think it's the magnitude of what we possess that dictates whether or not we should write a will, but it is actually the principle. Because remember, scripture encourages us and exhorts us that he who is faithful in little is going to be entrusted with much. So financial prudence, financial stewardship principle is what you are espousing. So even the little that you have, even pocket money, you can budget on, you can tithe on. And if you start learning these key principles with the little that you are stewarding, including prudence around living order and organizing your matters, then you will only carry this and only grow in these principles and discipline as you are entrusted with much and as you progress through your journey of life. So it's never too early to start as long as you are stewarding resources.
Okay, really insightful. It's great to know that you can write a will at any age, particularly. So the next question actually comes from one of the remedies to financial anxiety that you mentioned. So Wangui Ngede would like to know, when it comes to increasing your sources of income, how do you spread yourself effectively?
So I normally, and this is my own interpretation of the avenues that you can utilize to generate money. And I break them down to 3 avenues. One is what I describe as sweat, jasho, okay? And in sweat, what that for me portrays is that you have to be physically present, exerting yourself, okay? So like, think of a Mjengo guy. A Mjengo guy has to go to the site and has to haul, you know, the stones and whatever, and push and be present and exert themselves. So with sweat, you have to be physically present, applying yourself for you to generate income. Okay, so that is one. And there's an aspect that gives itself to that. And when you're doing financial freedom for families, the course, one of the principles we look at in terms of principles of managing God's wealth, because part of ownership is just understanding that everything belongs to God. He owns, we manage or steward. So one of the principles we look at is the principle of work, okay? And that you have to have a work ethic and a discipline around work, and you have to apply yourself to work. So sweat speaks to the aspect of applying yourself to work. The second vehicle or avenue or way that I, in my reading of it, interpret you can use to generate income is what I describe as money. You can put your money to work on your behalf. And even as you are here listening to me, your money can be busy at work, earning an income for you out there. So we describe an investment portfolio, another aspect that we look at in depth in the course, that needs to develop and to build an investment portfolio. Okay, and we look at the investment ladder, and we look at the options that you have, and how you can choose to position yourself. So your money can be at work for you, and you have prudently invested it, and it's growing. And even when you are portioning the elements of a budget, I mentioned operating from a budget. When you are portioning the elements of a budget, one of the non-negotiable elements of a budget, irrespective of how much you are earning, is a portion going to investment. Okay, and we speak to that. And another portion we give is towards what we describe as savings, which is really an emergency fund. And when you attain the target that we help you understand and appreciate, we then roll that over to your investment portfolio. So you are actively building an investment portfolio. So your money can be at work for you. Okay, so that's the second aspect. So the first is work. The first is sweat. Sorry. The second is money. The third, in my simple reading of it, is what I call ideas. You can harvest your ideas, you can document them, and you can put this out. A simple way for me that captures it very well is the writing of a book. If you write a book, that book harvests your ideas and perspectives around an issue, and it can be out there selling copies and earning you royalties, and you are busy doing other aspects of life. Another way that ideas can be expressed is if you are in an industry, like I mentioned, I've been in the financial sector, I've been in product development. So one of the things that I actively pursue is to think up financial products. And since I've worked in microinsurance with insurance companies, I've worked in microfinance with microfinance institutions, then I sit down and I think through what insurance products can serve this market. And if I'm able to harvest those ideas, articulate them clearly, I can actually go pitch them to insurance organizations and companies and have them take up these products and push these products in the market. And I don't need to be even actively involved in that. I just need to negotiate royalties, and I can earn from those royalties. But my idea is busy at work elsewhere, whereas I'm positioned elsewhere. So these are ways that you can leverage resources that you have, generate income streams for yourself, and still and not be overstretching yourself. So I hope, Pascal, that helps, that you can actually be able to have these different aspects, go to work on your behalf, and you are still able to concentrate on your primary income vehicle. For most people, fortunately or unfortunately, all these avenues are focused in one place and space. Whereas I think it's actually possible to diversify and to allow that this go to work for you. And then when you pick investment vehicles, you can even just get even to split the hairs even more and multiply your income streams creatively. I hope that helps, Pascal.
Okay, yeah, that is definitely really insightful. I think we can definitely take 2 or 3 more questions. So for the next question that we're going to ask you is, this is a bit more on the personal side. Is there any point in your life you or someone you know have dealt with financial anxiety? How did you or how did they cope?
Yes, I have. I keep mentioning this course, Financial Freedom for Families. My wife and I were discipled in Financial Freedom for Families about 10 years ago now. And we had clear strain. I was already, when I talked about the physical signs that show that we're dealing with anxiety, one of the physical ones for me was palpitations, which is you can actually hear your heart beating. So that was something that I had to contend with. A lot of that physical manifestation, lack of sleep, disturbed sleep, and this, even from time to time, I find that is reoccurring, and it's normally a pointer that I'm dealing with an anxiety of some sort, and sometimes it may be financial. So yes, so this has been my reality, and in part, the reason why I became part of championing this message is because I started realizing that myself and those of my my peers were starting to manifest and to suffer a lot of serious lifestyle illness and repercussions because of anxiety that is not addressed. Unfortunately, anxiety, if you think of it, is at the beginning point of a continuum of psychological issues. So if you don't arrest anxiety, and this is one of the thoughts that I'll be dealing with towards the end, if you don't arrest anxiety at the beginning, it then develops into more complex psychological issues. So it starts with generalized anxiety. If not addressed, you start going into more complex forms of anxiety. You start going into panic attacks. You start progressing into even more complex psychological situations. So what you want to do is flag it early and resolve it early. Now, how did I deal with it? Part of it was seeking help, and I'll be talking to that. So I got myself financial literacy, information and knowledge that empowered me around how to manage money and how to steward it. I got psychological help, and just got to immerse myself into understanding and appreciating the psychological dynamics at play when you're dealing with financial challenges and issues. My counseling credentials, I actually picked them up because the people we would work with would help them deal with the shillings and the cents, the debits and the credits, the record keeping and the budgeting. But then we realize there are many attendant issues that come with this package. Family strain, addiction issues, betting and all of those, shopping sprees, and irritability and anxiety issues. And so we needed the psychological aspect. So I've also taken time to learn, both for my benefit and for the benefit of those that I get to interact with, these principles. And that is how I was able to address it on my end. And maybe somebody else will learn from that example. But financial freedom for families is one course that helped me put finances in perspective from a biblical foundation. And just understand, what does God say about finances? What does he say about this resource called money? And are we able to steward it and balance it and master it? And I realized that Scripture is not silent about it. God is not silent about it. There's a lot of wisdom that God pours forth from his word available to us to help us manage this resource, this aspect of our life. And so I have benefited from that richness over the years, and it has helped me address financial anxiety.
Thank you very much for sharing your insight. In the respect of time, which is a limited resource for all of us, we'll address one last question, and this is coming from Joanne Karanja. So she's quoting Isaiah 55, verse 11, which talks about speaking things into existence. And
just repeat that, Pascal. Okay?
She's wondering, doesn't this? Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. So, Isaiah 55, verse 11 talks about speaking things into existence. Now, John is wondering, how does this relate, given that you mentioned that you should plan your worst case scenario? So how do you balance optimism versus being a realist?
I'm going to ask that you repeat again. There's a part there that I didn't get clear.
Okay, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better. I'm trying to.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So Joanne is asking, so Isaiah chapter 55 verse 11 talks about speaking things into existence. how does
Taking
this
things into
relate to,
existence.
yes, how does this relate to what you talked about in planning your worst case scenario? So how do you balance optimism versus realism?
Okay. I'm just trying to. I'll try to get to that scripture as you are quoting it. But if I understand the question correctly, it's how do you this whole situation of describing your worst case scenario and balancing optimism versus realism. I think that's the thrust of the question.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, planning does not negate faith. It affirms wisdom. The biggest challenge we have when it comes to financial issues and financial anxiety, like I mentioned, and I had put it in bold, the underlying emotion is fear. So part of why we recommend that you process your possible worst case scenario is because you are able to anticipate what can unfold and prepare for it. When Joseph stood before Pharaoh, he described the worst case scenario. He said, a famine is coming. It shall be tough. It shall be 7 years of not having food or rain. So there was a clear articulation of the worst case scenario. And if Egypt failed to prepare for the worst case scenario that Joseph described, the worst would be visited upon them. Okay? So it is a clear articulation of what's possible, but it is not a resignation to it. Because remember, you are processing this now on your terms. So you can now say, if I don't do anything, this is what will happen. This is what will unfold. When a parent pays school fees for their child at the beginning of their term, of the school term, or at the beginning of an academic season, like let's say they're going into high school, as a parent is paying school fees term after term after term, for the entire 4 years that a student is in school, they are not paying for an E grade. They actually pay for an A grade, okay? They pay for the best case scenario, but they will tell that student, I can do everything to position you for success. I can pay the fees, I can provide everything you need to go to school. But if you don't do your bit, even if you are gifted and talented, this is what shall unfold. So you need to take wise steps, prudent steps that avoid this negative scenario from playing out. Okay? So an appreciation of worst case scenario doesn't mean that you are embracing it or resigning to it. No, it means that you are then able to figure out what wisdom, to draw wisdom from God. How do I prepare? The reason why I took time to describe the next 4 years for you and tell you that, yes, we are dealing with COVID, but next year, 2021, is an election, is a pre-election year. 2022 is an election year. 2023 is a post-election year. So the reality you are dealing with, friends, is we have the next 4 years of possible financial stretching. Okay? That is the reality that we are facing. Now, it doesn't mean that it shall be the financial downfall for you. No. But it just means now that you know that, wisdom dictates, prudence dictates that you start putting your house in order and positioning yourself for a rough season that is coming. You have to tighten your belt. You have to rethink how you do business. You have to rethink what projects you get into. You have to rethink how you apportion resources. You have to rethink, like the bear, how am I going to ride out? What survival strategies and tactics are going to help me ride out? not just the next 1 month or 2 months, but a possible 4-year period. What do I need to tweak, to adjust, to radically change if I'm going to come out on top on the other side? I need to draw wisdom from God. So facing or looking at your worst case scenario doesn't mean you're resigning to it. It positions you now to make good decisions, wise decisions, based on the reality that you're having to contend with. Okay? So that is what we are looking at. When we train about financial literacy, we teach the course ideally over 6 months minimum. Why? Because we want you during the 6 months to experience inflows and outflows. We want you in the 6 months to experience a significant life event. So in the course of our classes, we have participants losing loved ones. We have participants getting children. We have participants losing businesses. We have participants getting windfalls in their businesses. We have participants moving offices and moving locations and moving house and relocating countries. Because we want you to test these principles that you're learning in real life environments. So accepting reality is not defeatism, it's not resignation. It's positioning you, if you choose to assess this practically, for wise interventions that will help you ride through tough situations. Proverbs told us, a prudent person foresees evil coming and hides himself, but a fool goes on and suffers the consequences of their foolish decision. So we cannot bury our heads in the sand like an ostrich would and hope that it shall be well. No. Unfortunately, with this one, we have to take stock, and especially with financial matters. And when you're dealing with business people, they are more awake to this reality. The harsh reality of just the business context forces you to consider pragmatically or practically the courses of action you have to take. So I know normally we want a positive, warm message, but sometimes what we need is a hard saying that positions us to do what is right, so that we're able to be here tomorrow, to be a blessing to our families and those in our sphere of influence. I hope that helps, Pascal.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you for that, and of course, all the insight that you've given us over the course of the past 2 hours. So at this point, I would like to hand the reins back over to my colleague Joe to offer some closing remarks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pascal. Thank you so much, Henry. I mean, I'm really, I was just doing my own writing here in the notes. I mean, I'm going to use this for my own family. And I just wanted to share something just as an announcement, what we have prepared for the whole series. This is the second part B of the series we have been running. The first was dealing with the family and spouse, and this was about financial hardship. The next one will be about just maintaining your faith in God. It will be on 23rd of this month. And as Mr. Mwaniki was speaking, I just realized that we have a link. If you're interested in taking the financial freedom course for families, we have a link. My colleague Pascal will put it in the chat, and my colleague Salome will put it also on Facebook. For those who are interested, we have created that link that you can register so that you are able to be part of those who are going to really take charge of their financial future. And as Mr. Mwaniki was just speaking, I think I had already committed to this, and I'm going to be part of the course. So if you're interested, my colleague Pascal has posted lots of links, but I just want to take you one by one. So the first link is just a feedback that we need to receive from you. This is about just improving these sessions. We don't just want to have a webinar, or we don't want just to have an event. We want to have an event or a webinar that will be more equipping, as one of as Mr. Mwaniki noted, that take advantage of these sessions for you to be equipped to just handle what is coming. The second link is a tax clinic that we are having on Friday. And this tax clinic especially is good for this season, because we are going to be going to just at the end of the financial year, or on 30th of June. So if you have any questions about taxes, please just find that link there and just register. And the fourth link is about now the course Mr. Mwaniki has been mentioning, the financial freedom for families. Kindly, just if you're interested, register. And the last link there is about a journey of generosity. Even in the tight reality that we are in, Mr. Mwaniki said you can still be able to be generous. So this is a course a training that is offered by Generosity Path. So if you are interested in just being part of it, the days are 26th and 27th, 3 hours of training on each day. So if you're interested, the links are there. My colleague Pascal has posted them on the chat and also on Facebook. So I want to just give Mr. Mwaniki a few minutes to just close us up, and we can call it an evening.
Thank you, Joe. Maybe just some quick closing thoughts. One, I know this has been a fairly fast and intense presentation, but if any part of this spoke to you, and either yourself or a loved one, in your estimation, is dealing with some form of financial anxiety, my strong plea and recommendation is please seek help. Please seek help. Seek financial literacy help, seek psychological help. Because if you fail to do this, there's a risk that you run, or the individual runs, of harm to self or harm to others. So please don't belittle this. If you feel that this is an area of concern for you or for a loved one close to you, I strongly recommend that you reach out for help and talk to someone about it. My contacts are up, and I know through Joseph you can get in touch with us, or my colleague Sarah Gitahi, who has been part of this session. Would be glad to be of assistance in one way or the other. We'll be giving some follow-up sessions to this one, what we're calling a crash course of the course I described, F4. So from next Monday, we shall have a similar interaction like this one, and then some practical 3-part session. I know it was 4-part when we first talked with Joseph. It's now 3-part. So if anybody is interested in just following through and hearing a little more about this content, this message, this information, don't be shy to reach out through the link that Joseph has availed, or through our contacts directly. Either way, we'll be glad to be of assistance. So thank you very, very much. We started by prayer. Allow me to end with a blessing. Number 6, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord cause his face to shine upon you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Have a good evening, everyone. And thank you for coming.